Hi, this is Greg with Plumbing Around, and on this video we're going to be augering the main sewer service on a house. And this particular house is a little bit older and is prone to getting tree roots in the service. They come in at the joints on the old clay tile pipe on the way out to the street. So to prevent a unwanted and messy backup, we're going to just do a preventative maintenance on this. And in order to do this, I've rented a power auger from a local tool rental shop, and I'll show you the steps on how to get set up and do the job. In order to get started with this job, the first thing you need to do is locate your main cleanout access. In older houses such as this, it can be a little bit of a tight spot, and it's in the basement bathroom between the vanity and the toilet. You can see the cleanout cap, and once you've found your cleanout, then you can get yourself set up and get ready to go. So now that we have the machine in place, it's a little bit tight and awkward down here, but with our cable guide, you just want to get your cable with your cutter head feeding into your cleanout. You can see the larger size cutter head that I'm using at this location. I know that this house has got the service cleaned regularly, so this is just a preventative maintenance, so I know I can start with a larger cutter head. So you want to gently guide it into the clean out hole with the cable guide, so that's ready to go. If you were unsure of how bad the root blockage was, or if it's totally obstructed, you may need to start with smaller cutter heads and basically work the service. You might have to run it more than once, and you could potentially have to start with a smaller head, poking a hole in it, cutting it as you go, and then working your way up to a bigger cutting head. Now that we have our cable into the service, into the clean out, and we have the appropriate cutter head on the end, we want to make sure that our switch is in forward. On the switch there's forward and reverse, and that just refers to the rotation of the drum with the cable. And then we have an auto feed control on the front that controls whether the cable's going in or out of the clean out. So you always want to have the rotation of the drum in the forward setting, and use your auto feed on this model to control whether the cable's going in or out. The forward and reverse on your switch just refers to the drum rotation, not the direction the cable's going. So once we're set up with the cable in there, we have our foot switch, and this is just basically an air activated switch that we'll use to start the drum. And they have this in case you're working in a location where there might be water on the floor, so you don't get electrocuted by having an electric switch. So now that we're set up and everything's ready to go, I have the auto feed in forward, and then you can either step on the bulb or use your knee. Since I'm kneeling down, I will just use my knee, and we'll get underway. So as we're progressing down the service, you always want to be paying attention to the rate at which the cable is feeding into the service. If you start to hit any larger obstructions, the cable will slow down going into the service. Then you can just ease off on your speed, or just stop the cable and just let it work on that spot. And you just always want to be paying attention. The machine is a little bit noisy as the cable feeds in, but that's normal. So you're just observing everything as it goes. You're just being careful you don't have any long hair or loose clothing that could get into the cable guide and pose a hazard for you. And you just watch and let it run all the way out to the end. So once you're almost out to the end of the cable, and I've made sure I rented a machine with 100 feet of cable, because the average length of a service where I'm at is about 85 to 90 feet if you're towards the back of the house. I've noticed that the machine, the cable's making a little bit more noise and kind of skipping a little bit. That probably just lets me know that I've already made it to the full end of the service and it's kicked out into the main in the street. But to ensure you've gone your complete distance, you always want to let the cable run out as far as you can. So now that I've made it all the way out, you can see I don't have anything left in the drum for cable except the pigtail on the machine. So now I'm going to put the auto feed into reverse and use the foot switch again to bring her back, and then in a few minutes we'll see if we caught anything on the cable. So as the cable was coming back and filling up the drum, I know I'm getting closer to the end of the cable being back. As it's almost back at the clean out, you'll be able to hear the cutter head spinning around. So once I know I'm almost to the end, and I could see I had a little bit of roots coming back on the cable, I shut the machine off and I pulled it back out of the way so that I'd have room to work. So this is what it looks like when you have a bit of tree roots come back on your cable. So the cable flops around in the pipe, cuts all the roots out. This is actually fairly minor for tree roots. And for the video and the filming of the video, I've done a little bit of clever editing. So one thing you'd also want to do before you start is put a drop cloth under your machine, because it's an open drum, and as you come back there may be some moisture on the cable that'll drop down and potentially spray around. So make sure there aren't any nice objects, good towels or anything around that you don't want getting covered in a little bit of sewer water.